Good afternoon, everyone. It is such a joy for me to participate in this panel, and I am truly sorry that I cannot attend in person, but I want to extend my heartfelt thanks to Ana and la Comunidad de Feministas Unidas for putting together such a wonderful panel. So my presentation today highlights the process of digitizing the Association of Caribbean Women Writers and Scholars Archive. And I specifically would like us to think together throughout this presentation about conference work, service to the profession, and Caribbean women writers' cross-cultural connections. So thanks to the generous support of the Caribbean Digital Scholarship Collective Micro Grant and the University of Michigan Rackham Graduate Student Research Grant, in 2023, I traveled to Florida International University's Special Collections and University Archives. There, as we can see in these images, in boxes that had yet to be organized, cataloged, and documented, began the work of digitizing the Association of Caribbean Women Writers and Scholars Archive, which I'll refer to as ACWWS from now on. So one of the goals of this project was to develop the ACWWS Digital Archive. And today I am excited to invite you all to explore this digital collection at acwwsdigitalarchive.org. And to save time, I've included screenshots of the website's features throughout the PowerPoint, but I encourage you all to scan the QR code to access the website directly. So this archive is an open access collection aimed at conserving ACWWS institutional memory, recording the influence of the cross-cultural connection between scholars, writers, and artists of the Caribbean, and displaying the scholarly and creative works of the diverse, multi-layered, and storied Caribbean communities. So due to the lack of support for women's writings in the early period of Caribbean literature, and even today with limited resources and academic constraints for Caribbean communities, one of the benefits of preserving the association's archival knowledge is to demonstrate the importance of ACWWS in developing Caribbean women's literary scholarship and communities in difficult conditions. The archival materials and testimonies gathered in this digital archive tell the story of what spurred Caribbean women's writers and scholars' desires to fill gaps, assemble, and serve to keep the profession alive. So before diving into the collection, I'd like to provide some context about the association. It was formed in 1994-1995 in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, following the landmark 1988 Caribbean Women Writers Conference organized by Selwish Cujo at Wesley College. And this conference created an awareness of the number of Caribbean women writers and generated a volume dedicated to celebrating their presence. So women's writings were barely taught and discussed in the early phase of the field, and few works by women weren't even published until the late 1970s. So the 1988 conference and those organized in the subsequent years allowed Caribbean women writers and scholars to experience each other's presence, but also reshape Caribbean literary intellectual discourse. So today, the ACWWS Digital Archive currently holds conferences and newsletters materials. And although the field of Caribbean literary studies has tussled with the inclusion of all the people, places, and cultures in the Caribbean, ACWWS involvement in conference work and service to the profession begin to explicitly present how these women transform the field of Caribbean literary studies and sustain Caribbean regionalism and cross-cultural connections. So the process of building this digital archive also involved adding metadata to the documents. And metadata refers to data that provides information about other data, including here details like the title, the creator, the description, and the language. And metadata can serve as a site of knowledge production. As Elizabeth Maddock Dillon argues, the digitization of archival materials must be viewed through the lens of both the translation of knowledge and imperial domination. And Dillon advocates for the use of metadata as a vital tool for knowledge production, emphasizing the need to reimagine knowledge creation in archives free from colonial influences. So when I was working on the collections in this archive, it was essential to highlight the names and places in the subjects and keywords section of the metadata. And this allows us to observe basically the names, places, languages, and cultural exchanges presented in these texts, and illuminates as well the coming together of these writers and scholars from diverse backgrounds. So this image, as we can see here, showcases the ACWWS 7th International Conference Program held at the University of Puerto Rico in 2000. And here we can see the detailed metadata description for this record. So these diverse connections amongst Caribbean writers and intellectuals are paramount for Caribbean communities and scholarship. As we know, although much of the Caribbean shares a similar ancestral lineage, Caribbean communities' relational awareness of each other is often divisive due to the various colonial and imperial ruptures experienced in these territories. So the balkanization of the Caribbean and connections to the global north underscores how our perception of the Caribbean is often unproductively framed by separations in terms of nation and diaspora or region, as well as linguistic divisions such as Anglophone, Dutchophone, Francophone, Hispanophone, and Lusophone. Although this is not to say that we should not acknowledge our differences. I want to end by saying that this project is deeply rooted in a methodology of relationality when examining the conference works of Caribbean women. And as I explore how women engage in conference activity, I also focus on the relational dynamics occurring in their encounters across various Caribbean backgrounds, both locally and in diasporic settings. And I like to briefly end by just noting the people that have supported and inspired the creation of this digital archive, as well as with an image from our latest conference in Costa Rica. Thank you. Muchas gracias.